Good morning. Good morning.
Are you alone?
Yes, I'm alone. I'm in Noah's room, which we've taken apart.
Is it sad?
Not anymore.
So now you're free.
Now I'm free.
You were going through a small sorrow process last week.
Yeah, the weeks before, actually, it was the sorrow process was already done. It was ending last week.
Yeah, but I think it's interesting and necessary to be in it, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I've also been Friday. I had a little call with Florian, and we talked about the voiding idea again.
Yeah.
And yesterday Vanessa came back from Costa Rica and also ran it past her. And there's some idea emerging that we could look into next week or maybe now before Tyson comes in, which is if you remember the image of the knot with the incoming and outgoing complexity. So
Yeah.
the first movement of the voiding is going into that knot and untying that knot. And so we pick a topic, and Vanessa had the idea yesterday to build this on a Toltec method. So I pick a topic and everybody goes into that point. We direct people towards that point they're not, and they should write down all of their assumptions and knowledge about that point. So things like people need jobs, people need to live in a house, people, things like that. And then we have a conversation and start questioning all of these things to let them go, to open them. And then there's a ritual to physically let go of them. So for example, one thing we could do is everybody keeps the camera on, but they darken the room so that it's the screen is dark, but we're still visually connected. And then we do a ritual in the dark, for example. And then we come out and then we look forward, and then we go into the void of the unknown in the future.
The unborn.
The unborn, the unknown, right?
But I love that was one thing I got out of working 3 years in South Africa is rituals around things.
Yeah. Amen. Good to see you.
Hello. How you doing?
Good. Good evening.
Yeah. Hey, good evening. So what's going on now?
Whoa.
So I'm a bit dopey. I got a headache, and it's
All
just
right.
a very full on day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's just have a fun and relaxed session now.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah. So let me like begin with a little contextualization, so you have actually an idea who we are, what we're talking about, why we're talking, and then we give Lars a chance to also show something of himself, and then you. How's that?
Right.
As a
Sounds
beginning.
good.
Good. So I'm pretty obsessed as a, let's say, a digital entrepreneur mostly, with trying to do things towards making the planet a good place. And I had this really transformative situation in 2003 where some really high profile bankers, like central bankers from Europe, explained to me in a meeting where they wanted to create a alternative currency system, how money works. And it was like my mind was blown, right? So I understood, maybe you know him, Bernard Lietaer. Bernard taught me the emergent negative properties of a fiat GDP system, and what that means and all of that. And so what the Game B guys call the multipolar trap, essentially between the fiat GDP system and the short-term marketing cycle of the political system we're in, is something I'm trying to think through and act through. And as I move through this, I find more and more that this is a minority problem, right? So let's say 800 million people on the planet are actually the core of that problem. And if 7.2 billion people discover that they actually don't need to be enslaved for those 800 million, and stop working for them, stop believing that they actually need this financial capital stuff, they can lock themselves out today and stop delivering bananas and beans to Europe and America, right? Essentially. So to put it very bluntly. And that kind of thinking, and there's a whole structure, and I don't want to go into this too much, but that kind of thinking led to the idea that helping people to log out of the current dominant system and into independent, self-sufficient, self-reliant communities, and teaching how that is done.
That idea is like called socialism or communism,
No, it's not.
Plenty of countries have been trying
to
fucking do it. No, let me finish. They've been trying to do it for decades. And basically, it's not, I'm not saying that it is communism. I'm saying it's called communism. I know what you're talking about, and it's not quite like that. It's more like anarcho-syndicalism. It's more like localism. However, basically where you end up with that is you get it fucking assassinated. It's, I guess, visit anybody, talk to anybody from South America, from most of Africa. I've talked to somebody from fucking Libya, bros. Talk to anyone from Libya and find out what really happened there. It was like, some idiot had the same idea that you just had. Yeah, we'll just stop selling our bananas to Europe, will you? Anybody want to sell me some fucking bananas? And yeah, the bananas come. That's how it goes, man.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
You need to find, So it's a very, very good vision, and we need to make it happen. But I have no idea how to get past that bit. Do you?
So if you're playing in the, and I'm gonna shut up now and give space to Lars in a moment. Sweet. But I just want to finish that. If you give the space, if you play this game inside of the existing political system, you're shot, right? And personally, if I know I'm on the right path and really trying to do this thing, if I get shot, then I get shot.
Yeah.
But I don't think
you're looking to change the game.
Yeah, but I don't think it's necessary to play the game. You cannot change the game by playing the game.
Yeah, that's it.
So
yep.
So you have
to change
to
it first and then play.
Yeah. So you get these so-called intentional communities, right?
Yeah.
And they're structurally mostly not working because they live off tourism. They're not really self-sufficient or self-reliant.
Yep.
But what
They're
happens?
parasitic off the game, eh?
Exactly. So so what happens if which people have been doing for millennia? People relearn how to truly live off the land. Truly live off the land. First, a few. And then people have that knowledge. We package that knowledge in a way that people can liberate themselves. There's no central authority liberating them. They do that themselves. It's just information. And this is what we're after.
So what land is the other thing?
Very good.
All land is surveyed, enclosed, and that makes up 2/3 of global capital. So what land can people return to or have access to? I understand in a lot of Scandinavian countries, everybody has the right to forage, and that is awesome. I wish we had that here, but we don't. And so, most other countries, they don't have that.
So yeah, land is a problem. I acknowledge that. In the beginning, it's lesser of a problem as long as this movement doesn't pick up speed. It's you can do this with privately owned property by people who provide that. You could put a structure on this through foundations who buy land, or you could democratize that through something like distributed ledger. That is a money collection system for buying land. There are a couple of people working on stuff like that. You could move onto the water. That's another thing. So I would argue that's solvable, but that is a tough issue because that's where the friction will definitely start, when people start taking back land from those who currently own it. Yes, I agree. But what we're after here with the Pirate Academy right now is this year we want to, or we started last year, but we're having conversations with people like yourself who we believe hold knowledge for how to build such a community. So if you do away with the problems you just pose, you're not getting shot, and you get access to land, then still it's hard, right? Then it's hard. So we want to learn as much as possible about this problem right now, and then package that knowledge and start helping people gain that knowledge and put it into practice. That's the first humble step we want to do, right? And the way we'd like to do that is in a first conversation today with you here, we would like to ask one question to you, and then we let the conversation unfold out of that. And that question is, just based on your subjective knowledge and understanding, if you were to go or found yourself somewhere in the outback with 100 to 1,000 people who weren't there in the community before, how would you go about creating that community? What is important? What would you try to bring in from the game A? What would you leave out for what don't you want? What would your role be? How would you fill that role? What are the important elements here? And in very practical terms. So we want to get out of the theoretical game B bubble type of talking about these types of things. We want to get really practical. How do you build culture? How do you build governance? How do you stay sane and healthy in all of this? So this is what we want to do today. And before I go into there, I'd like Lars to give an opportunity to share about himself as well.
Well, hello, Tyson. I only got to know that we were going to talk to you last evening. I said, fuck no, I don't have time. But then I went into watch some of your videos and how you just laugh about all the bullshit that is thrown about you. Then I said, there must be something here that is interesting. It's about how we in modern times spend our time. We think we are free, but we are so fucking captured in our patterns. Really interesting. Then I read through that you are an educator. You really thought deep about education. I've been the president of the students in Europe, all of the students in Europe, building democratic student organizations in Eastern Europe, and was in charge of the future of leadership education at the Millennium Conference in the UN. So to me, this about educating in new ways have been the line of my life, I'd say. So I founded an alternative business school in Norway that started with inner compass and inner leadership, and then building relations, community, and what tasks in the world should we actually care about. And reading a little in your book, I didn't manage to read it all because I saw it late, and see some of the interviews. It reminded me a little, doing all of these clever people that were in the Millennium UN thing. You had the business people, the politicians, the science people, everything. But the one conversation that really struck me the most was with Jane Goodall. I spent 5 or 6 hours with her and listening to her insights from sitting all of these years in nature and how we got the entire picture totally wrong and respect. And she was talking with a young medicine man from Peru, Puma, that talked about the images he had from his forefathers and whatever. And I've been living as a Buddhist monk as well in Burma. So some of the stuff that you're into just resonates with me deeply. And we have to see, and the way you're doing is laughing about it and just be totally honest about meeting the bullshit and all these logics. So I got fascinated about your approach. And we are captured into a way of thinking and seeing that we can't see is totally sick. And you tapped into it, and I've been sharing a story a couple of times, but I spent my summer holiday in a way where I'm isolated for 5 weeks with some kids and other families. And some years ago, I had a conversation with the 7-year-olds. They were like 7 or 8, around more nights and campfire. And what amazed me is that when you have really, really deep conversation with 7-year-olds, they see all the things.
They do see all the things.
Yeah. Don't cut down the trees. Don't pollute the sea. Why should we put weapons all over the world? Why should a handful of people have everything? And they see it, and then you put them to Harvard, and they fucking forget what it's all about. And the other image is that if we arrived in space and saw this beautiful planet and the nature of us beings, we are marvelous and beautiful, all of us. And then we start to create the human systems, and it get into greed and power, and we can't handle it. So what it's all about here, Tyson, is that we know that we are fucked. And we are destroying our planet, and we are destroying ourselves, and we live captured in a way of thinking that is not useful, not even for ourselves. We get sick of it. So we live in a collective stress mode and fear mode, and we need to find ways out. And listening to you, or starting to read your stuff, there's some wisdom there. There's some simplicity that we've forgotten all about. And if we are not connecting to that, we won't manage. So that was why I canceled everything this morning just to meet you, because
that's deadly. Well, look, as they say in the game B and sense making community, that we're obviously all familiar with. If I can just push back on you there for a minute. So yeah, I'd like to push back on this idea of like children being, so wise. Now I think children are fucking hypocrites most of the time. They're really good at getting up and making speeches about what we should do with the world. but you get them like the hypocrites. You get them in a situation where they're like, someone's gonna get a lolly and they're not, and they'll just smash the jar, and no one will get a lolly. And you're like, there, look, that's what's happening with the world. Don't bloody stand up and do speeches at me, you little shit, you hypocrite kid. Anyway.
Well, they don't see the complexity.
That's not true. I just wanted to make you laugh.
Yeah, but you did, because I see. You remind me of a great friend, Keaton. He was like that. He was in charge of the internal processes in ANC and did the transformation in South Africa. He's the godfather of my children, and he just had this technique like you to split the brain of people so they started to think a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a provocation to say children are hypocrites.
Yeah, to some,
it's like a silly idea. Hey.
What you say is that they're easily manipulated, and that so there's some truth in it.
Well, I'm also suggesting that hypocrites are, children.
No, but
a lot of us, like the big players in the world, are kind of like, kids in a sandpit.
They are, and
one of them shit himself, and he just won't get out.
They learn to play a game, but they're totally immature inside.
Yeah.
So if that's a hypocrite, yeah, if you can say now you can get a lot of wealth and you can buy your own toys and they can be really expensive and you can dominate the world and be the big guy.
Yeah.
And
there's always somebody who's like the one who breaks the rules the most is the one who's always talking about the bloody rules, always insisting that everybody follows the rules and always knows all the rules. No, you got to stick to the rules, and then they turn around and break them. You remember that kid from school, eh?
Yeah,
that one.
Course.
He grew up to be the CEO. That one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
That monster. And that handful of baby CEOs around the world wrecking everything. But so how do we get by them? Because they got private armies now. I mean,
yeah,
Trump pulled that many troops, like state troops, out of Afghanistan, but he didn't mention to anybody that he was increasing the mercenaries and the private armies. I mean, there's more private soldiers in the world now than
but you know the Douglas Rushkoff story, right? Where he was invited to speak at Wall Street, which he first wanted to turn down, but then they offered him so much money.
With the bunkers in New Zealand.
Was it? No, it wasn't in New Zealand.
And they asked him. They were making bunkers, doomsday bunkers, right? And
exactly.
They asked him, how do we make sure that our soldiers
stay loyal,
don't kill us?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
when there's no money to threaten them with anymore.
Exactly.
We're back to the Roman army where the general paid the salary to the soldiers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just thanks so much to Dougie for going in there for us. So it's just gold, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay. So maybe we want to, like, with that stage, now
we warmed up.
Have we warmed up? You feel warmed up?
Okay.
So maybe go into the question and try and really put our minds into this, especially yours. And I'd like you to just go and riff on that for a while until you feel complete, and we start coming in, and just have a natural conversation. I think is how would you go about this? So 100 to 1,000 people somewhere in the outback. People have no shared history. You need to build some sort of culture coherence in there. It needs to have some organizational structure. How do you go about forming something that actually works?
You draw a really fucking big asterisk and sort people into those sections. I know that sounds ridiculous, but no, I mean, I believe if that was the case and we had to survive and that was where we had to go, then you basically, you're talking about almost a creation scenario of like, the arrival of people, creation story. And like, so I would just follow the pattern of those stories. And, the first thing that comes is, along with, language and knowledge and all that sort of thing, the first thing, even before that, is the kinship system. So you need a division, an initial division, and those sort of two big groups, totemic groups, or whatever those moieties, they call them, the anthropologists. That they need to be two separate things, and they need to be called something. But then there needs to be another division across, so that there are four.
Why?
Well, because there needs to be four groups, and those four groups need to be in charge of different territory around the place. So you need to look at the land and make sure that each of those four groups is controlling a different part of the territory that is essential to everybody. So you've set up the preconditions there for interdependence. You've set up the preconditions for this kind of syndicated, group of like autonomous peoples. Okay, so you make sure, so basically, this first big group, that's a separate group from that group over there. And they have a different kind of almost cultural like set of stories, but then you've got that another division, so you basically got these four clan groups, roughly four clan groups. Now those ones divide in half again into male and female.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically what you end up with is this 8-part thing, and you can only marry diagonally. So women from up here can only marry men from, down in the diagonal opposite.
Okay, that's it. To me, that sounds, I could totally follow, and I could see how that weaves a social web that can have deep interdependence and be by that.
So basically you control, so one group controls the water, the river over here, or one side of the river, another group controls another. Makes
total sense. But what I don't understand is, how do you create these groups? What is the process of coming from one group of, let's say, 500 people to these structures? How do you help people to find these narratives that they use to sort themselves into the groups?
Well, you're not going to be able to. Well, all you're going to be able to do is tell that story to as many people as you can while you're there, and then allow that to grow. If you think you're Moses and you're coming in there and you're trying to tell 100 to 1,000 people, you could probably Moses along for a couple of weeks initially, just as a transitional thing, if it was 100. But if it was 1,000, that's going to be a bit harder. The Moses thing don't work.
Yeah, Moses wasn't alone,
Yeah, you learn that shit in Exodus. The Moses thing don't work. There has to be a kind of emergence. So I guess you have to draw a lot of asterisks around the place and talk that through with people and show how that might work. And hopefully people will start to self-organize into that system. If they self-organize into it, it will last, because it'll be a self-organizing system from the start.
Okay.
But if you're setting it up and you're boss of it, see, I tell you someone else who tried that. I shouldn't have said Moses. I should have said Gaddafi. Because have you ever read his Green Book?
Yeah.
He's pretty much he's shown pretty much the only formula I've ever seen that would make democracy, like real, actual participatory democracy, scalable to the level of a nation, a large nation with millions of people. That was his vision. That's what he was trying to do. But so he had to have this transitional period of being an autocrat in order to, you know,
build
put
up.
down enough of the attacks coming from outside and bloody the old aristocracy from that place who was stirring up trouble. He had to be able to control things for long enough to try and get it in place. So he had to dictate, and he had to try and do it himself, and to tinker it and put it together. And, you know, he did great things for everybody. He housed every single person. He had a universal basic income. He bloody, you know, it was the most prosperous place to live in Africa. You know, women were equal, and, you know, everything was pretty damn good in Libya. If you're going to live anywhere in Africa, you'd want to live in Libya, but not anymore. You know, they stabbed him in the ass and killed him and tore him into many pieces and scattered those pieces around the place and then posted it on YouTube. And then Hillary Clinton was laughing about it because she sent them in there, those moderate Al-Qaeda rebels, freedom fighters, I think they were called at the time.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's what you get. So you can't be Moses, you can't be Gaddafi. You have to allow it to emerge. So for me personally, I would put that very simple symbol of an asterisk.
Okay.
And explain how that kinship system works, and explain how it works as a political system to control the resources, so that everybody from every group has control as a group over a very important part of the resources, of the land sort of system. Not just control, but authority. And they look after that. They're responsible for it. And they're very interdependent. And you're only allowed to marry across the groups, and diagonally. If you do that, then your children, they go out. So the males would go down to that one, and the females would go up to that one. You know, so your children are going out into different groups. Your spouses are from different groups, and you don't just live there separately from everyone else. Everyone's all mixed in, but everybody belongs politically to those different places and speaks for those different parts of the land that you're on. Now, that interactive, interdependent thing that ensures that everybody has autonomy, complete autonomy. Everybody there is sovereign, but at the same time is part of a collective in their family and clan groups, but then out to their bigger moiety group, but then out to the bigger tribal group. And then the challenge would be to replicate that structure going out to all of the other little game B-oids around everywhere else, all of the other bigger systems. Because if you can't replicate that interdependence model outwards into all those other places, then eventually, like, somebody's going to come in there and kill everybody and take your shit.
Okay, so
yeah, it has to be a simple idea that demotically comes up and is self-organizing and grows through the community. Yeah.
So
that's all you can do.
So you would in a move of trusting the natural growth and to almost Mandelbrot's how do you call it, the fractal fractal nature of this. So you would start in very small groups talking about this, and then just trusting and hoping that this idea is so clear and natural and easy, and that larger structures emerge out of this. Do I get that correctly?
Yeah. So it's fractal in that each individual is an autonomous individual that's part of a small collective. Each small collective is an autonomous collective that is also syndicated in with a larger collective. Each of the larger collectives is an autonomous collective that's also, syndicated in with the people, that larger people. And then that people is an autonomous people. And they are also syndicated through trade, and marriage and travel and everything else, tourism, whatever you like, in with all of the other peoples around there. So it's that kind of fractal nature. Look, Raz, for decades I've been trying to make that pattern work, just in anything, in organizations, in programs, in all kinds of different things. And it's never worked yet for me. It's worked for a while, but it's not long before you get fucking idiots who start to think this is really good. Who's the boss of this? Who's going to be the boss of it? And you assert, no, there's no boss. We don't do boss. You know, that authority shifts around, you know, in different situations, and it's for all of us. It's distributed throughout, but you can see it in their eye there. They want it. This thing is so good. When you have something that's good, eventually somebody is going to want to either own it or destroy it. And then as soon as somebody gets that, then you get another one pop up, and then they're struggling against each other, and it's wrecked. Then it's finished. It doesn't take long for it to go downhill and just turn into a farce.
Okay, so there now we have several open directions. I would definitely want to follow what you just said, but there was something else you said earlier that I also want to go a little bit into, which is actually twofold, which is the cross pollination part, and the split, the gender split. So inside of the separate groups, you talked about gender split. So two questions around both of these. Why is that important, and how do you make it happen?
Yeah, well, like I said, you can't make it happen. It's something that needs to emerge, because then that allows for outliers as well. I mean, if you're being like an autocrat and you're determining who is male and who is female and where they're going to go, then
I was just asking because you were so clear about
it's going to be rubbish. You've got to let it emerge. I guess, you know, if somebody is a woman and they say they're a woman, then they'll probably go there with the women. If someone's, I mean, and then, you know, things are going to happen. So that group of women, there might be another woman in there who says, no, I don't want you here. And, you know, then they're going to have to figure that out. And if they can't figure it out, they'll probably go and start to talk to some of the other female groups, because there's 4 other female groups. So they'll start talking to them. And, you know, maybe another group will say, look, you know, whatever, we feel differently about that than you do. So we'll be the ones who look after that. So we're the women who look after the forest over here. And, you know, basically we'll take all that on board, and you guys can just stew in your own juices over there until you sort out your heads or something. You never know. Or they end up having a big war and everything falls apart, which basically right there is your first stumbling block. I can't tell you how many organizations, movements, even like, you know, really quite fierce, like resistance cells, I've seen fall apart completely within a few weeks of asking the same question that you just asked them. You know, basically just a broad question about gender. Then everybody divides, all right. Divide battle lines, the whole thing falls apart. I've seen that many movements just ripped apart with people deciding that, you know, you have to have an absolute idea of something, and that you have to believe in it 100%, and you have to know that you're the one who's absolutely right, and you have to fight to the fucking death over it. I guess, you know, anybody who thinks like that is going to die. When if you had 1,000 people dropped in the middle of the bush, I guarantee you 750 of them are going to die in a week, and it's going to be all of those ones. And I won't be giving them any of my food. I'll basically go over there and I'll, I won't use a fire for a week because I don't want them to find me. And I'll just, you know, I'll eat very well over there for a week and gather my strength together. And then I'll come back and see who's left and go, all right, us 250.
So you reckon that you need to have some way of bubbling up those who can hold complexity. So
just people who just aren't assholes. You know what I mean? Anybody, this absolutism is just, I don't know, are you sick of it? Most people are sick of it surely by now. But it's kind of dictating all discourse now, you know, most discourse.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Have you seen, so really in really practical terms, have you seen a situation where a culture like this
Mm.
was functioning at least for some period of time, and they were able to somehow down-regulate those selfish actors?
Mm. It depends how dominant it becomes. I mean, we do have stories about that. We have stories about that, and those people who are punished for doing that.
So the
And I
typical
think that's
scapegoating.
in the end. That's in the end where you do need your justice system to emerge, and that's really tricky because who polices it? You know, so once again, your justice system needs to be a distributed model where everybody is involved. Everybody has the capacity to deliver justice. However, it needs to be grounded in something bigger. And here's where the whole thing falls apart. And if you don't have it, then it doesn't work. And this is the secret of it. And that's just, it's the law of the land. There is law in the land. The land talks to you. It tells you what the right combinations of things are. And it tells you your limits. And there are actions that you can take, which in the end will break the pattern of your society or of your ecology. And basically your ecology and your society should be patterned on the same things. If you break the pattern of the ecology, which is encoded in the stories of the place that you build up so that you know them, then you're breaking the law. You're breaking the law of the land. And there is law in the land, and it speaks to you, you know, and it speaks to you as much in cause and effect as anything else. You know, there are just things that are right. And in the end, you know, this does get very complex, but it shouldn't be complicated. It should not be complicated, but yeah.
I just learned a couple of weeks ago, when the 5 Chinese kingdoms merged into Big China, as they were confronted with a similar policing problem, the way they solved this was by putting people into groups of 5 that were responsible for each other and were all held accountable if one of the 5 got into shit.
Yep.
What do you think of such an idea?
Yeah. Yep. It's something that's been used in a lot of armies, you know, and civilizations for a long time. It's you know, your classical Roman threat of decimation. You know, that idea that if you started an insurrection in the army, it would not necessarily be you that got killed, that got executed for it, but it might be the man beside you, because they all had to draw straws to see which of each, you know, 1 out of the 10. You know, because you'd have your little, you'd have your units in the Roman army, like your smallest unit was a tent. You know, men who slept together, a group of, you know, 6 to 10 people. And the decimation thing was one guy in that tent would have to be beaten to death by the others when the order came down. Innocent or guilty, right across the entire army. Decimation, if there was any talk of rebellion. Yeah.
Didn't know that.
So yeah, I hear it was highly effective.
Yes, I can totally see that. Okay.
But really shitty. And what kind of system would drive people into a life like that in the first place? Absolutely horrific.
Yeah. Well, let's not go into the sick system. Let's go more into exploring how we build a sane, healthy system.
Well, I think that was a really good example of how easy it is to take something from the existing sick system and infect the new system with it. You know, it's your system has to come from the land. It has to be patterned on that landscape. You know, if you're in desert, then it's going to be a very different system from if you're in mountains. You know, if you're on floodplains, it's going to be a very different system. It'll have to be highly mobile for half the year. You know, if it's if it's on savanna, if it's in forest land, if it's in, I don't know, terraced plantations, if it's in swamp country, if it's a combination of several of those things, that bioregion that you're inhabiting, it has its own language, it has its own name, it has its own spirit, it is an entity, it has a pattern of beingness, and your being will need to follow that pattern. Your emergent society and system of laws will have to end up biomimicry way, coming from that place that you are, because if it doesn't, it will fail. It has to emerge demotically and biotically and organically from that place and from the right interactions of people upon it. And that's the trick, is how do you get people to have right interactions coming from a right story if you're starting from scratch with no story at all. And that's why in all our creation stories, the ancestors, the big creation spirit ancestors, the entities, when they give us, the first thing they give you is the kinship system, the marriage system. Then they give you language from the land so that you know the name of everything in that land, so you know the knowledge pattern of the landscape. And then they give you, the laws, the story of the place, and you need all of those things before you can begin to function in that place, let alone thrive. So yeah, that blueprint's there, and you'll probably find it in every single culture around the planet.
Do you think so the hard thing, you just pointed that out, is learning to speak the language of the land, and which means that there is adverse driver for just leaving. So if things go sideways inside of that community, and you notice that the people, that somebody is taking over, the immediate logical option would be to get your 5 best buddies and just go somewhere else.
Yeah. Hard folks, right? Defectors.
So yeah. there's a lot of suffering connected to that, because you're leaving people behind and you need to relearn everything. So then the question becomes, if the hard forking is a method of controlling for negative forces, so saying, okay, if you we're not gonna kill you, we're just all gonna leave, so either you step back in line or you leave, but you're not playing this game with us. So if that is something that the people in the community can do at all times, that might be powerful. But then the question is, how do you keep that knowledge, that courage, that the necessary conditions for people to actually be able to do that?
Yeah, you just need to have a good story.
You actually have that system. You actually had that system in Pericles' time, where a majority could vote one powerful person to leave because that person will dominate the community, right?
Yeah.
So they saw what it did to the city state if one or few individuals became too powerful. So in the period of Pericles, when he did the last speech to the Athens, then it's documented this about that the majority could vote out the powerful people because they were threatening the community, right?
Yeah.
But I totally agree.
That's doable. But look, if every single person actually carries the agency of violence, Like that it's not, see, here's the thing, you know, when you get violence concentrated into one part of the community, that's when you know that things have gone wrong. You know, every single person needs to be an agent who is capable of violence, who is capable of asserting, you know, the law. And these things need to be distributed. And anytime it happens, it needs to be public, transparent, and expressive and given expression. If that's maintained, you find that nobody ever really rises to the top, because the tall poppy syndrome will take care of that. And, you know, in your sort of weekly fights or whatever, you're, you know, power hungry dude will probably get knocked on his ass. Yeah.
How did you call it? Tall puppy syndrome?
Yeah, tall poppy syndrome. You never heard of that?
No.
You probably don't need it over there. You lovely people. Tall poppy syndrome is, I don't know, I guess a poppy's like a flower, right? And so if the one that's taller than the rest, you know, it gets cut down, it gets knocked down. Yeah. Tall poppy syndrome is, you know, nobody likes a boss. Nobody likes a king. And, you know, a community of people left to their own devices will tear down any person who's trying to garner undue influence.
So couldn't you say, just to elaborate on what you're saying, like reading Fukuyama, he'd been studying how all systems have come into being through history, like 3,000 years. So I think some pretty interesting word, and it's basically always the struggle of who owns the story.
Yep.
So whatever, it can be laws, it can be religion, it can be combination.
Yep.
But who controls the story and who benefit from the story?
Who controls the story of the past, particularly?
Yeah. And what you're saying is
they control the narrative of the present.
Yeah, because there's so much into who we are that is a collective story, and who dominates it, and then you can have people to follow it, right? Just see what Trump did in the US. He made a story and made people follow it.
He did, yeah.
It was totally crazy. And what you're saying
he's smart, because he didn't need to even make the story.
No,
he picked up on the stories that were already there, and he went with them. He went with the stories of the people, the law of the people, and he picked them up and he simplified them and weaponized them, and that was it.
And I didn't think it was possible that you could tell a story like that and get that amount of effect out of it.
Yeah,
incredible. But what you're saying is basically that we need to tell the stories, and it need to be connected to the land, and doesn't it give us a tool to listen beyond ourselves as a human community?
Yeah.
Into something bigger than ourselves, into some wisdom.
Yeah, definitely.
Into us being connected to maybe something else than just our internal struggle for power.
Yeah, that's it. And but that's, you know, you have to resolve that tension and balance between the desire for autonomy and the desire for interdependence, you know, because you desire both, and they seem and you need both, and there needs to be a constant tension about
Tyson, I think your connection is dropping out.
I agree. It's the same with me.
Tyson? I'm going to send a message. Oh. So you almost you almost dropped out immediately when you started talking.
Okay, well, that's no good. I can't even remember what I said now. I've been trying to fix the computer.
Lars, can you bring us back in? You're muted. You're muted.
What we are talking about, Tyson, is that we need to listen to something else than our internal struggle for
yes.
power and position, right? We need to listen to something bigger, and that was at least what I got from the conversation with the Jane Goodall, this deep empathic listening. And what we in that process do as well is that we could become present, we become peaceful. There's something about the games between human beings, and when we are just in those games, it brings out fear and all the consequences of that.
Yeah, and look, that's where you find though you're that perfect magic point of balance between the individual and the collective.
Exactly.
And that's the core. That's the center of it all. That that little dyad there, and that fractalizes out to form your entire governance system, your economic system, everything. And that's like I said, that does reflect the pattern of your landscape. Is there is no good reason to separate the concepts of ecology, society, and economy. These things should all be patterned the same way.
And I think this, at least some of my training have been to try to understand the Apache system. I like this about thinking 7 generations. I think the core of learning balance, the core of serving the communities, even serving something bigger than the community.
Yeah.
We basically all live from a planet. And if we treat that in a right way, then we will have a rich life, because we will have food enough, and we will have shelter, and we can build a healthy community where we don't, like you said in one of your talks, spend all of our lives running around thinking we are important, but basically surviving. So how do we do this life where we have time to be present, time to be truthfully in nature, doing something really useful, like producing our foods and building community instead of exploiting community? I think that's when you can get into that mode and seeing the benefits of it, you have a chance. But as you say, which I think is a big thing, there was always come some rotten egg in there.
Yeah.
And whatever, like you are talking about, I've been trying to build organizational systems and organizations all of my life, like creating youth movements, and it lasts for a while, and then somebody sticks in there and say, I want to grab this.
That's it.
And done it a lot of times, and often kids start really innocent. Yeah, we do it for each other and for the planet and blah blah blah. And I saw it even in student politics. You had these beautiful young kids having a lot of great thoughts and meanings, and then they became part of the system. 10 years after, they can't think.
Yeah. See, I told you kids are hypocrites.
No, they become advisors to the prime minister, everything. And
yeah.
Then they got realists, as they say. Don't dream, don't think about these silly big thoughts.
Yeah.
We are here to handle every day and the power and my next job and position. So
well, I hope that doesn't happen to Greta.
No, I don't think it happened to Greta. But you have these people that are immune to that game, even when they rise to power. But it's a minority. Why are they immune? What is it that they do?
What, the perpetrators or the just good people who just seem immune?
Manage to have influence and power and are not corrupted. And so you can see it, all of the African leaders, like Mugabe started like a good guy. All of them started like a good guy, but then they end up like the worst of the worst.
Oh, so you're talking about the what makes a person immune to corruption?
Yeah, how do we do that? How what we've been talking about in Pirate Academy is that let's get some of the really interesting kids from around the world and try to train them not to be corrupted. Because, like, I've been part of building youth movements all of my life. They've been called different things, but in the end, it almost always end up in a corrupt system and falls apart. And I think you've done the same. I hear it from the deep of your voice. You spend a lot of your life energy trying to find a way to build healthy systems, and then, oh shit, it got fucked up again.
Yeah. Now all I'm trying to do is develop the right stories and cognitive tools to leave behind for the people who are coming next. To pick up and give that a go. I personally don't believe that it's possible to do it in this system. I don't think anybody is incorruptible within this system, and I don't believe that there is strong enough or good enough story in enough populations of people to turn it around. Yes, I think that. But then also I know, I mean, I keep telling my people all the time, like, unless we can bring all these settlers back under the law of the land, unless we can bring all of these domesticated, civilized people back under the law of the land, everything and everyone is going to die. Everything and everyone is going to die. So we need to bring them back. So, I mean, at the same time as I'm sort of saying, no, I've just got to leave tools behind. I guess that's my doomsday kind of prep in that direction. But then otherwise, I'm also thinking, we've got to try and, save as many people as we can.
But I think there's some
we've got to make sure that as many people as possible understand and know the law of the land and desire to come back under it.
But what you're basically saying is that if we are not listening, and let's look at all of the planet as the land, right?
Yeah.
And what you're saying is we are basically not listening to the land, then we are doomed. And we could say that the paradigm that we are in now is that we totally lost to listen to the land. That's basically why we are where we are.
Yeah.
Just want to ask something around this. You say listen to the law of the land. So that implies that there is a law of the land that you can listen to. What happens if you if it's more not listening to the law of the land, or maybe I'm just misunderstanding you, but listening to the land itself is a different story. Because as I understand it, the law is what people put on top of the story of the land.
Yeah, no, this is different. This is a capital L law, and it is the patterning of the knowledge within the land.
Okay,
it's that
right. Okay,
that
okay.
right.
But
story.
that's an important distinction.
Yeah, it's like the laws of physics. You can't just debate it in Parliament and pass a different bill. That's a law of fucking physics. Same.
It's connected to the truth, right?
Yeah, well, it kind of, it's not even truth. I mean, it just is. The existence of the word truth, like, I don't know, it implies that you need to have lies as well. It's I don't know. Look, for me, it's just, that just is. It's there. There are some basic things that we can agree on in a consensus reality. And if you bring the land in as a sentient entity to that table that you're forming a consensus with, that changes things a little bit, because the land doesn't lie and can't lie. It doesn't have the capacity to lie to you. It can only be what it is. So if your law is grounded in something as inalienable as the landscape and the knowledge it's patterned within the landscape, then it can't be a lie and it can't be misused. and that's what's missing from all these placeless systems around the world.
Totally.
These massive nations that are all trying to uniformize everything.
So at the
There's
core,
no place.
so at
There's
the
no
core,
law.
at the core of it is, what does that mean? How does one really learn to listen to the lore of the land with a capital L?
Look, it's initially, but not even initially, but all the way through. But as your point of entry, it's about observation. And that observation, it just has to be tuned so keenly. A lot of people go inwards and do meditations and stuff. That's lovely and everything, but your awareness needs to be more about observation of reality, keen and intensive observation of reality all the time, every day, getting better and better and better at it. Of course, noticing patterns, but coming into relation. The things that you observe will give you messages about the knowledge in that landscape, and that knowledge will start to pattern itself within you. You're consuming from that landscape and interacting, with the information you're learning, and you're coming into a sort of beingness within that system, as a part of that system, and then that knowledge will flow through you, and you will come into relation with it. And when you're in relation, then you're coming under the law, and it becomes apparent to you. I know that sounds no good. That just sounds so faith-based and like, just pray to Jesus and he'll take your pain away. Hallelujah. But no.
No,
it's not that.
It's totally meaningful because it's not just a statement, it's a process that you engage in and what the process does to you.
Yeah, it's a way of life too.
It's a way of life, and then you just said the best comment so far today, at least in my notes, is that what is wrong, what is missing. You're basically saying what is wrong with the systems that we have today is that it's a placeless system. That's an extreme precise critique.
Yeah.
It's like the financial circus. Everything is just floating around in the air, right?
Yeah.
And manipulating the lives of people. So that's what is a really strong getaway. It's a placeless system. I haven't been able to say that precise.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I really want to thank you because I've listened to several of your talks. I've read through your book, but I haven't really understood viscerally that connection to the land until today. So I don't know why.
That's good. I don't know what we said,
but now I have it, and it's thank you.
Maybe it's that word, placeless.
Maybe.
No, I got the same feeling, Tyson, because it's not a statement. It's a way, as you say very clearly. It's a way of being. It's a direction in your life. It's a search in which you will find yourself in relation to, and that in relation to will help you form the human relations as well.
That's it. It's in a way, it's a method of inquiry.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, it's almost a research method when you think about it.
And it gives totally meaning. It's not anything mystic or anything. It's totally right. It feels instantly totally right.
Yeah, and rigorous, It demands rigor.
Now we have a process for our academy, Thomas. People need to listen to the land.
I totally see that. I'd completely done away with this dimension of learning to live, and I used to say, I'll change that now, but I used to say off the land. Now I'll say with the land, but now it's really come together. So I can see. So let's make it smaller. Let's say there's a smaller bunch of people, 5, 10, 50, whatever, and you go, or you're alone even, and slowly over time people start coming to where your fire burns, and you're learning the language of the place you're at.
Yeah.
And after a while, and you're doing this because you want to survive, right? This is your mode of survival. This is nothing mystic or anything. You know that understanding how this ecosystem that you're embedded in works is your means for survival.
Yeah, that and killing all the other males. Yeah. That's a joke.
No, it's not a joke.
No. They can help you. Together you're usually stronger. but anyway, so now let's say this is a first generation thing. The first generation really still understands the necessity of survival in with the land. Now the second generation, is already a little bit more abstract. That's where the stories come in that we tell to transport this through time. And then the question becomes, what is a good structure and ritual and method to try and move these stories through time? Because that's necessary for long-term prosperity of that of those people.
You know, it's funny. It's kind of like, you know, asking, how will we teach a whale to swim in the ocean after it's been in captivity? It's like, it'll swim. Yeah, flap its flippers and it'll swim. I mean, but basically humans, that's what we do. We story. You know, the thing that holds together all the different parts of your mind and makes you conscious, you know, in neuroscience, they call it the storyteller or the narrator. It's basically some part of your brain, and they're not sure where it is yet, but they know something's performing the function of arranging everything into a story of your life that you're constantly making. That's what we do. We narrate. We're like, you know, I don't know, Homo fabulous or something. We make stories. And the stories are maps as well. And the maps are stories. You know, all of your cognition is navigational and story-based. You know, so it's profoundly place-based, and there is stories running through that. And any human culture, you know, over time will develop its own LORE, law, not that capital LAW I was talking about before, but any community, any culture will develop its own stories. So you look at something as young as Silicon Valley, that's not very old, eh? It's not heaps of generations of people yet or anything, but it has its own stories and law, doesn't it? It has its own meta language. You know, it even has its own homeland. You know, it's actually named after a place, and it's, you know, it's got all of those things. And if you really sort of look at any culture over time, you get those stories develop. And it pretty much just will. And it's better if these things are oral rather than print-based. I think I make that point in the book that the only way to store information permanently is intergenerationally within an oral culture. There is no other technology that is resilient enough or proven to be resilient enough to store anything longer than that ever in human history.
Do you think there's a second deeply important component to not writing things down, which is adaptability? So There's
Yeah.
an image I like to use at the moment, which is we tie knots into complexity. And those knots are, let's say, feelings or symbols or concepts. But sometimes we have to open those knots and allow the complexity, bathe in the complexity, and then tie knots in places that make more sense now. And this change in the narrative doesn't happen if you write it down.
No, I mean, that's it. I mean, you can you can keep storing and replicating your DNA in CRISPR and or something. That's probably a bad analogy, but basically your DNA needs to be part of the living system of your body. There isn't a better system for it than that. It needs to be interacting and changing slightly all the time as it interacts with its environment. Your DNA does that. It changes slightly and mutates even over the course of your lifetime, but then intergenerationally as well. Now, I guess stories are the DNA of culture. And these are things that must change and adapt with time. But I guess once you write that down, then that's it. Once you have the King James version of your story, you basically CRISPR'd yourself. You basically just frozen a big bunch of semen.
Yeah.
And that's the only semen that can be used for the next 1,000 years. Yeah.
That's interesting. So there's, I think it ties back. Do you happen to know Julia Watson?
It's ringing a bell.
She's created this beautiful book called Low Tech, and she's looked at.
That's great.
And
she's great.
There's there's a very interesting idea in there about houses. So in different cultures, people built houses that on water that were swimming, and in all of them, they fall apart in one generation. So you're building something and it's going to fall apart in one generation. And so there's this constant renewal and regeneration and innovation built in. And then the question is, how do you stop people from building stuff that lasts longer? Because you don't want that. You want the constant renewal. And but some just like the balance between the collective being and the individual being, there needs to be a balance between the solidity of the stuff we built and its possibility to just rot and go away, and for the necessity of renewal. And now as we're building stuff for forever, right? We're trying to build everything from steel and blah. What is so probably it ties back, as I'm saying this is I'm basically answering to myself. If I listen to the land, I'll probably understand that I'm rupturing and hurting the land if I build something that lasts too long. But I'm just guessing. I don't know. Maybe I have some more interesting thoughts on this.
But I guess it depends on what that place is and what it wants. Is it a place that's moving so slowly that it likes having permanent or semi-permanent structures, there? And are those semi-permanent structures going to provide, habitats for different kinds of lizards? And, is it going to actually help out the ecology of the place and complement it and actually be embedded within it and actually be part of that system? Are you going to, base those structures on the structures of the place that are already there? Like, be they termite mounds, be they, granite sort of monoliths, or, all different kinds of things. Are they, have a look at what's there. Are they trees? As it wood, is it a place of wood? And would you build from that? Or are you moving across the landscape and doing, temporary dwellings, that you're only in for a couple of months or a few months, from the materials in the place, which then sort of breaks down after that and just becomes mulch.
Let's zoom out a little bit.
Or do you carry it with you? I mean, that's another option as well.
Yeah, as you move
do
around.
You carry the materials with you and move around like that? Yeah, we're probably going to need to be mobile as we go along.
Yes, with climate chaos for sure.
All right, they're going to dim the sun. They're definitely going to do that. I'm absolutely certain of it. I keep hearing them talking about it, and all of the research that they're doing into dimming the sun to stop global warming, and I don't think anything's going to stop them from playing with that that toy. I think they're going to dim the sun, and I don't think they quite understand what the knock-on effects of that are going to be.
Yeah.
And even like they're understanding the effects of what's going to happen if they don't do that, and they're trying to weigh up which one's worse. Which one's worse? What's going to happen if we dim the sun? Spray stuff up into the stratosphere to block the sun, or what's going to? Neither is a good option. They're both bad options, but they're just looking for the least bad one.
Well,
that's the world we're going into in the next couple of decades, and so that world's going to need to be mobile. You're going to need to be able to move communities pretty rapidly.
Yeah, well, in any event,
freezing, snowstorms in Texas, etc.
Yeah, I just hope that things break down before they can do that, and so that the infrastructure that would be needed to do this just isn't in place anymore.
Me too. I keep praying for that EMP from the sun every day.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Yes.
Do you mind if we end this early at like about 1:30? Would that be all right?
It's totally cool.
I've just learned there's problems with my kids, and I need to go and sort them out.
No, we can end it right now. We can end it right now.
My woman's doing a PhD, and she's got deadlines tomorrow, so she's pulling a late one.
All good. Yeah. So first of all, I really want to thank you. I learned so much today.
No, thank you. That's good talk.
And if you, I'm pretty sure we will reach out again for some deepening. I'd love to. And if you want to chat, just reach out. We're in the process of this. We're going to review this conversation, learn from it, and probably come up with some better and deeper questions. And then we just take it from there.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Beautiful.
We'll see how we go. And hopefully we'll have plenty of time to do it. Yeah,
no worries.
See what we can
before
do.
The EMP. We have to do it before the EMP.
Yeah, well, that's it. And then we won't need it. Yeah. All right. Hey, Lars, thank you for coming. I know you're busy. It's really good to get a chance to talk to you. It was really good to have a laugh with you too.
If we miss that laughing thing, then we are done.
Yeah, that's it. That's if it came down to it and there was laughter or fucking and I had to not do one of them for the rest of my life, I wouldn't even have to think about it. You need to laugh or you're dead man.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a famous professor in economics in Scandinavia. He says there's two things left in the world. There's shopping and that is fucking.
and laughing.
Of course, an economist would say that.
Yeah.
That's pretty much all economic theory distilled down into one sentence. Nice.
That was why it was fun.
It's the invisible hand of the marketplace, the invisible cock of the marketplace, right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Cool.
I love it. Okay. Okay, man.
All right. Very, very good to talk to you,
You,
gentlemen.
you too.
And,
You too.
see you
Have
next
fun with the
time.
kids. See you.
Yeah, well, indeed.
Ah,
So
that was a lot of fun.
was that worth canceling this stuff?
Yeah. I would have canceled 3 days for this one.
Yeah.
Just think about. Think about bringing really talented kids out for a process. I first thought 1 month, but then I sensed it need to be 3 months. Put them into some area and say we are going to build a community. So, Thomas, I thought about what about doing the thing real scale where we just for 3 months say, okay, this is 3-month experiment. We're going to form a community. We start from scratch.
I would totally rephrase it. I would not even say the word community. I would just say we come here together to learn how to live with this piece of land.
Yeah, okay, but same shit. But that was the idea.
Yeah, but community changes something in your mind. I really understood that now.
Yeah, you're right. I follow you. We're going to live with this land for 3 months.
And
because community is wrong, right?
No, it's not wrong, but as you know, for every single question I could come up with now in this conversation, the ultimate answer would be look at the land, right? Sometimes the structures you need or that fit can last hundreds of years. Sometimes they should rot in a decade, right? Sometimes you take them with you. So sometimes it is better to have a large community. Sometimes it's better to have like small families that move around. So that's what I understood.
The law of the land.
Yeah.
You need to be one with the land.
Yeah, and we have to. So he was struggling with that too, but we have to take the mysticism out of that, and just make it really crystal clear that this is, and it's not hard. I mean, in the moment where your survival depends on living with the land, it's not hard.
No, and what was so great about this thought is that it's so simple. It was really we both had this feeling this is a building block that we have been missing.
Mm-hmm.
The foundation building block.
Mm. Mm.
And what is wrong with the systems that we are currently living in is that they are placeless.
Yeah. Place is the important thing.
Because then we think we live in a contextualized reality, but basically we have ripped ourselves out of context.
Mm-hmm.
And that's made us insane.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
We answer to nothing.
The invisible
but
cock.
our own dark nature.
I love it. The invisible cock of the market. I love it. I'm going to use that.
Yeah, masturbating.
Yeah.
Okay, stop recording.
No, this.
Yeah, it's fun. Hey, do you want to say hi to Secret?
Hey, yeah, of course.
No, now she just ran out.
Yeah.
She's been in here curious a couple of times.
Yeah, so sweet.
It's winter holiday in Norway.
Okay. Yeah, we just had. Did we? Yeah. Oh, I don't know. with this whole homeschooling, it becomes, I cannot differentiate between, but there was a holiday here too.